The air in the Egyptian desert, which is located 50 kilometers west of the Nile, did not only have an ancient feeling. It had a hushed feeling, as if the earth itself was holding a breath that it had taken 5,000 years ago. It was Dr. Aris Thorne who was kneeling in the excavation hole. His face was engraved with more lines than the rocks that were all around him. It was not a papyrus document, or a story of a tomb robber that had brought his team to this location. Rather, it was aberrant. Geological studies. Fragments of pottery and flint implements were what they were seeking for when they were searching for the origins of a pre-dynastic society. All that they discovered was a door. There was not a great entrance with inscriptions leading to the chamber of the pharaoh. Rather, there was a slab of obsidian that was seamless and concealed behind a layer that dated back to a period when people were apparently just beginning to learn how to cultivate. It had a chilly sensation to the touch, and it hummed with a vibration that was barely audible, which caused their teeth to hurt. After weeks of laborious effort, they discovered that there was neither a seam nor a handle. Elara, a young linguist, was the one who saw it. It was not a keyhole, but rather a pattern of depressions that resembled the constellation of Orion. However, the constellation was not as it is today. Rather, it was predicted to be above Giza 5 millennia ago. Not only did the door not slide open, but it also did not slide open when they inserted stones from a nearby meteorite fall into the depressions. As seed unfolded, the surface of the obsidian material flowed like liquid mercury until it solidified into an open archway, exposing a room that had been hermetically sealed from the effects of time. As the cameras captured Dr. Thorne's first steps inside, the whole globe held its breath in anticipation. In addition to being tiny and spherical, the room was lacking of the golden gems that the general population desired. In the middle, on a basic pedestal made of the same inconceivable material, there was a solitary item. It was a sphere that was approximately the size of a grapefruit and was made of a crystalline substance that seemed to retain a dim light from inside. It was once referred to as the orb of celestial harmony. During the first research, a series of puzzling failures were discovered. Carbon dating was a pointless endeavor. It had a surface that was more durable than diamond, and did not exhibit any tool marks. Before Dr. Thorne, in a moment of frustrated intuition, laid his hands upon it, it was completely still. There was no movement at all. A sophisticated, three-dimensional star chart was projected into the middle of the room, while the internal light increased in intensity and the sphere unfurled in a quiet burst of geometric light. But this was not a straightforward map. It is here that the tale starts in its truest sense, and it is here that our history is A user might interact with the star chart. It reacted to both ideas and physical contact. Not only did it display the present locations of the stars, but it also had the ability to scroll backward and forth through time with a precision that was unimaginable. Taking into account the velocity of the galaxy and the drift of the stars over the course of millennia, not only did it portray planets, but it also depicted their moons, asteroid belts, and comets with such detail that our own models from the 21st century would be very impressed. Then came the most amazing surprise. Elara made a significant discovery as she was analyzing the complex symbols that were flowing around the projection. Their purpose was not only cosmetic. In addition to being a mathematical language, they were also a combination of geometry, astronomy, and a physics that was quite different from our own. Among the things that were discussed were gravitational constants, the quantum foam of space-time, and the presence of a resonant energy that pervades the universe, which is a force that contemporary science has not yet named. A calendar was not what the orb was. It existed as a simulator. It had the ability to simulate astronomical occurrences, with a margin of error that was so little that it was statistically negligible. Solar eclipses could be predicted for every site on Earth over the next 10,000 years, regardless of where they occurred. It was a collection of information on a supernova that occurred in the Vela constellation and would not be visible from Earth for another 300 years. We were only able to validate this information by cross-referencing it with readings from the Hubble Space Telescope. Everything was reconnected to its original context by this one improbable item. What is the intuitive genius behind the Great Pyramid? positioning in relation to the true north with such accuracy? The mathematics of the orb included the fundamentals of sophisticated geodesy and spherical trigonometry, which not only made the accomplishment of such a feat conceivable, but also made it possible for its builders to do it with ease. Are you familiar with the concept of star gods and lost wisdom? They were no longer considered to be myths. They were fragmentary and fading recollections of a true, worldwide civilization, or possibly a single, extremely sophisticated culture that had reached a technical and scientific pinnacle before an unknown calamity, a great reset, obliterated them from the record. These memories were fragmented and faded. A last sequence that was stored inside the orb was the most eerie and deep finding that has ever been made. A message was sent, not through the use of words, but rather via a series of basic mathematical principles and DNA sequences that are shared by all forms of life on Earth. It was an inheritance. Throughout the decades, there has been a librarian's voice that whispers, "We were here." It was clear to us, rather than being gone, the information is only waiting. As opposed to being a mystery that should be feared, the universe is a system that should be understood. You are not our descendants. Rather, you are the ones who will succeed us. Start right now. In addition to adding a new chapter to history, the finding of the Orb of Celestial Harmony was also significant. The whole book was thrown into the air as a result. Not only did it demonstrate that ancient civilizations were sophisticated for their period, but it also demonstrated that they were advanced by definition. Their intellect was not primitive. Rather, it was just different. It was perhaps more holistic and more in touch with the underlying symphony of the universe than our own segmented science has ever been. At one point, when we looked at the pyramids, we would ask ourselves, how did they build this? Now, as we gaze up at the stars, we can't help but think, what else did they know that we are only now, millennia later, struggling to rediscover? No longer is the quiet of the past devoid of any meaning. It reverberates with the buzz of an intellect that has been forgotten and is waiting. The message that read, "Now, begin," was not a conclusion, but rather a starting pistol. The chamber that was located under the Egyptian desert was no longer an archaeological site. Rather, it was the most renowned institution in the world, and the lone lecturer there was a crystal-like ball that would remain quiet. The group led by Dr. Aris Thorne emerged as the guardians of a different kind of renaissance. It was no longer sufficient for them to be Egyptologists and linguists. They had become pioneers on the coast of an ocean of knowledge that had not yet been explored. The earliest star charts, which were really stunning, were nothing more than the cover of the textbook. The more they learned to interface with the orb, which seemed to be a procedure that included a combination of concentrated intent, tactile touch, and a peaceful mind, the more levels of knowledge that were disclosed to them. Ilara was able to comprehend that the vocabulary used in mathematics was not only descriptive. Rather, these words were prescriptive. The principles of a physics that was founded on resonance and harmonic unification were included in it. The principles, through the use of calming the fabric of space-time surrounding an item, they discovered designs for devices that could alter gravity without the need of physical force. This would result in the object being effortlessly light. Rather than being anti-gravity, this was in favor of harmony. The fact that feathers might be used to move stone slabs weighing several tons was discussed in the article. The pyramids were not tombs. Rather, it is possible that they were enormous power plants that were geologically grounded or resonant telescopes. Their shafts and chambers were fine-tuned to precise frequencies that were found in the heavens. Among the findings that were the most shocking was the biological information. There was a comprehensive map of the human genome housed inside the orb, but it also included annotations. The orb's language recognized inactive sequences, sometimes known as junk DNA, as potentiality codons. These sequences were highlighted using this method. A clear message was sent, which was that the human form was not a completed thing. If only we had the ability to interpret music, the ancients would have known that our biology was a musical instrument that could produce far more accomplished symphonies. As is customary, the world's response was a turbulent mixture of amazement, terror, and greed. This is how it always reacts. The second part of the scientific revolution is devoted to the theoretical physicists, who were the first to have their paradigms challenged. Suddenly, the standard model seemed to be nothing more than a child's doodle in comparison to a masterpiece. Concerning issues like as dark matter and quantum gravity, the resonant energy model proposed by the orb offered answers that were both sophisticated and surprisingly simple. By tuning the atomic lattice of a material to a certain harmonic frequency, a group of researchers in Switzerland claimed to have managed to produce superconductivity at ambient temperature. Their findings were based on data that was translated from the orb. At the time of the theological earthquake, religions all over the world were frantically trying to absorb this new fact. Some people believed that the creators of the orb were the long-awaited gods, or Elohim of the Bible, and that their miraculous actions were now being explained as the result of modern technology. It was a deception, a test of faith from the one and only God, according to the preaching of others. A new quasi-religious organization known as the Harmonists emerged. These individuals held the belief that the ancients had found the underlying frequency of God consciousness itself, and that the orb was the key to reawakening it inside mankind, the Shadow War. While the general population was awestruck, the world's intelligence services and business groups perceived not knowledge, but rather the ultimate strategic weapon. Whoever completely mastered this technology would have complete control over the many aspects of energy, transportation, and communication. Even if the desert location was militarized, it was already too late. It was as if the genie had escaped from the bottle. Once the data was seen, it could not be removed. The blueprints for resonant energy collectors, which could pull endless power from the quantum vacuum, were already available on the black web. These blueprints were being hastily constructed in garages and covert laboratories all over the world, anywhere from Silicon Valley to However, there was one more lesson that the orb had to give, and it was the most exquisite and horrifying of all. An ultimate covert protocol was activated by Alara when she was undergoing a profound meditation interaction. A new picture took the place of the star chart, which vanished over time. On top of the holographic map of the Earth that was shown in real time, there was a shimmering and pulsating web of light that was superimposed on it. It functioned as a network. At some locations, such as Giza, Machu Picchu, Stonehenge, Easter Island, and Angkor Wat, as well as hundreds of other holy and ancient places, there were nodes of high energy that pulsed. It was like a circuit board on a planetary size, with all of them being linked to one another by weak, throbbing lines of electricity. This was not a gadget that could be used on its own. It was a point of entry. The ancient society had not only constructed buildings, but they had also tuned the whole world, therefore transforming the planet itself into a massive resonance receiver and broadcaster. Both the pyramids and the standing stones were not solitary monuments. Rather, they were amplifiers and repeaters in a worldwide system that was very complicated. What is the goal? This was the response that was offered by the simulation. It was a shield. A resonant barrier that is intended to shield the globe from potentially hazardous cosmic radiation and solar micronova cycles, as well as to stabilize the tectonic plates throughout these cycles. In addition, the system was not functioning properly. It was clear from the map that the web was dull and flickering. It was dark at the key nodes. The catastrophic breakdown of this particular mechanism was probably the cause of the Great Reset that had the effect of wiping them out. The last communication that came from the orb was not a hushed whisper, but rather a command that was crystal clear and resonant, and it reverberated not in their ears, but in their minds. A lack of the conductor is present. This symphony is beginning to falter. Take a seat at the podium. There was no longer a need to demonstrate that the past had been advanced by the discovery. In the current moment, it was an absolute need. Not only had they discovered a relic, but they had also succeeded in inheriting a duty. Not only were the ancients more intelligent than we had previously believed, but they were also the guardians of a planet, and they had just handed off the responsibility. The competition was no longer to comprehend the past. Rather, it was to reconstruct the future by using a blueprint that had been forgotten. The buzzing that emanated from the orb became stronger, serving as a rallying cry that reverberated all throughout the world. No longer was the question, what did they know, the one that was being asked, but rather, do we have the wisdom, now that we have the power, to finish what they started? The eons of stillness had finally come to an end. This time, the music started up once again.